Every country in the world is in debt today. The United States owes more than $38 trillion, the highest level in its history. The European Union has around 14 trillion, Japan is close to 9 trillion. Even rich countries with oil or strong exports like Saudi Arabia, Germany, and China all owe huge amounts. But here is the strange part. If everybody owes money, who is the money actually owed to? This is Financial Histories DK, where money power and history meet. And in this world, nothing is as simple as it looks. Debt is not only a problem or a weight. Debt is the structure of the modern world. Every war, every crisis, and every financial boom or collapse stands on top of this hidden system of IOUs. And when you follow this chain far enough, you see something surprising. The world doesn't really owe money to one single group. It owes money to itself, but that doesn't mean everybody gains the same way. To understand how we got to this point, where the planet is drowning in more than $315 trillion of debt, almost 3 times bigger than the global economy, we have to go back to the beginning, long before credit cards or digital banking existed. National debt was born in war. In 1694, England was fighting France and running out of gold. The king asked merchants for help. In return for steady interest payments supported by future taxes, the merchants funded the crown. To manage this new deal, the Bank of England was created. This changed everything. The state could spend money it didn't have yet. And lenders received something extremely valuable. A promise from the government. That promise could be traded, bought, or sold. This was the birth of the government bond and the start of the modern financial system. France copied the idea. The Netherlands improved it. The young United States used it to pay for the revolution and later to grow westward. National debt didn't mean failure anymore. It became a sign of trust and power. To borrow was to rule. In the past, empires needed land to get gold. Later, they issued bonds to collect interest. The battlefield slowly became the balance sheet. 3 centuries later, debt has become the world's biggest product. The United States owes $38 trillion. Japan owes more than $9 trillion. And global debt grows by about $1 trillion every 100 days. Every country owes money. Every bank lends money. Every citizen with taxes, savings, or pensions is both a debtor and a creditor at the same time. But who holds all this debt? Let's start with the United States out of the $38 trillion. About half is held by investors instead of government agencies. Around 2/3 of those investors are American banks, pension funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve. The other third, about $9 trillion, is owned by foreign countries. Japan is the biggest holder with about $1 trillion, then China with $800 billion, and after that the UK, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So when people say America is in debt to China, it's true, but only around 2% of the total. Most of America's debt is owed to America. The Treasury issues bonds, banks, and funds buy them. The Federal Reserve sometimes buys those bonds again, creating new dollars. Americans pay taxes, those taxes help pay the interest, and the interest flows back into American retirement accounts. It's a circle. The debt is real, but the creditor is mostly the same system. And this isn't only in the U.S. It's global. Japan lends to the U.S. The U.S. lends to Europe through the IMF. Europe lends to developing countries through the World Bank. Developing countries then lend back to richer countries by holding Western bonds. Every country holds another country's IOU. It's like a huge circle of promises. And behind all this is another powerful layer. The market's hedge funds, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and central banks control tens of trillions of dollars. They decide which countries borrow cheaply and which ones struggle to survive. When they lose confidence, currencies crash, governments fall, and whole economies can change overnight. Democracy decides leaders. Markets decide who survives. Central banks play the biggest role. They don't just manage debt, they create it. Every time the Fed or the European Central Bank buys government bonds, they create new money. A liability on one balance sheet becomes an asset on another. Every dollar in the world represents someone's debt. There is no money without debt. This system works as long as confidence stays strong. If investors believe governments will pay interest, even if the principal is never fully paid back, the machine continues. But when confidence breaks, everything changes. We saw this in Greece in 2010. When the government couldn't pay, bond markets panicked. Debt became extremely expensive. The IMF and the ECB stepped in, but with hard conditions. Tax increases and deep spending cuts. A whole generation paid the price. In Argentina, repeated defaults turned debt into something like a national curse. In Sri Lanka, the government ran out of foreign currency, and the country fell into chaos. When things break, the creditors become visible, the IMF, rating agencies, and big investors holding a country by the neck. But after the collapse, the game starts again. Old debts get replaced, new loans are issued, the machine resets. Why? Because in the modern world, debt is not meant to be paid back. It's meant to be rolled over. Governments don't plan to pay their debt. They refinance it again and again. The real product is interest, and the global system depends on that interest. Like a shark that must keep swimming, the system must keep rolling debt forward. The United States will never pay back its $38 trillion. Japan has more than 250% debt to GDP, but its bond yields are still close to zero. Investors don't care about repayment. They care about renewing the deal because government bonds are seen as the safest asset on earth. If Washington somehow paid back all its debt, banks and funds would lose their most stable asset. The dollar supply would shrink and the economy could crash. So governments do the opposite. They keep issuing more debt. Not in a crazy way, but in a controlled rhythm. Debt becomes the heartbeat of the whole financial system. So when politicians talk about paying down the national debt, it's just an illusion. The goal isn't to remove debt. The goal is to keep it stable enough so confidence doesn't break. Because when confidence dies, the numbers don't matter anymore. Interest rates explode and the system stops. Here is the real truth. The plan was never to pay the debt back. The plan is to make everyone believe that repayment is always possible. As long as trust stays alive, the system can grow forever. But trust is not equal. Interest payments don't go to everyone. They go upward from workers and taxpayers to institutions and investors who hold the debt. So debt is not only between countries, it is also between classes. That's why global inequality and global debt rise together. The system rewards those who own debt and punishes those who pay it. Creditors aren't villains and debtors aren't victims. They are just two parts of the same machine. But when new borrowing slows down and promises cannot be kept, the system shows its real face. And the question, who is the creditor, becomes very real and personal. Because at the top, there is no single enemy. It's not China, not Wall Street, not the IMF. It's all of them and all of us. Modern finance has turned debt into money. Governments issue it. Banks multiply it. Investors trade it. Citizens depend on it. The line between debtor and creditor is almost gone. Debt once meant chains. Today it means balance. But if that balance tips, the illusion ends and we remember what debt really is. A promise that cannot last forever. If this gave you a new view on the world, hit subscribe. History has the answers, and I'll show you where to look.